They think the walls are silent. They think the darkness is a vault. But they forgot one thing. The lens never sleeps. If you believe your home is your sanctuary, you need to watch this until the very last second. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell, because what I'm about to show you is the reason powerful people want this channel erased. The house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac in Oak Ridge, a neighborhood of manicured lawns and even more manicured reputations. Inside lived Elias, a freelance data analyst with a stutter and a spine made of iron. Elias was the definition of an underdog. While his neighbors drove German SUVs and discussed offshore accounts, Elias rode a bicycle and spent his nights auditing local government expenditures for fun. He was the little guy the giants didn't even bother to step on. One evening, Elias installed a new, high-end smart security system. It was a gift from a client, an AI-driven camera capable of thermal imaging and low-light facial recognition. Just for peace of mind, he told himself. He didn't know that peace was about to become a memory. The first night was quiet. The second night, the camera triggered at 3:14 a.m. Elias woke up to a notification on his phone. He swiped the screen, expecting a stray cat or a wind-blown branch. Instead, the screen showed a high-definition thermal feed of his own backyard. 3 figures were moving with military precision. They weren't burglars. They were carrying specialized equipment, scanners, long-range microphones, and something that looked like a signal jammer. They weren't looking for jewelry. They were looking for him. Elias watched, frozen in his bed, as the figures approached his back door. They didn't break in. They stood there for exactly 60 seconds, pointed a device at his smart lock, and then, just as quickly, retreated into the woods. Elias didn't call the police. In Oak Ridge, the chief of police played golf with the mayor, and the mayor owned the very development company Elias had been investigating for a multi-million-dollar land grab fraud. He realized then, he wasn't just being watched. He was being calibrated. The next night, Elias stayed awake. He positioned himself in a blind spot he'd identified in his own hallway. He watched the live feed on his tablet. At 2:45 a.m., the feed flickered. A digital artifacting, the sign of a professional hack. But Elias had hardwired a secondary, offline SD card into the camera. The hackers saw a loop of an empty yard. The SD card, however, saw the truth. The front door didn't just open. It was unlocked from the outside via a remote override. 2 men in suits walked into his living room. No masks. They were confident. They were untouchable. One of them was Marcus Thorne, the city's lead prosecutor, the man who stood on podiums talking about cleaning up the streets. Thorne sat on Elias's sofa and sighed. "He's a ghost, this kid," Thorne whispered. "Find the drive, the audit logs. If he goes live with the developer files, we all burn." Elias watched through the camera lens as they tore through his life. They ripped open sofa cushions. They checked the vents. The tension was a physical weight. Elias was 10 feet away, hidden behind a false pantry door, holding his breath until his lungs burned. Then, Thorne's partner stopped. He looked directly at the smart camera. "Is it recording?" the partner asked. "I jammed the cloud sync," Thorne replied. "It's a paperweight." Thorne walked up to the camera. He leaned in so close his pores were visible in 4K. He smiled, a cold, predatory baring of teeth. He pulled a cigar from his pocket and used Elias's limited edition coaster. It was an act of pure, arrogant dominance. The men left at 4 a.m., convinced they had found nothing because Elias had hidden the encrypted drive in the one place they'd never look, inside the casing of the camera itself. But they didn't realize that Elias wasn't just a data analyst. He was a coder. As soon as the door clicked shut, Elias emerged. He didn't cry. He didn't pack his bags. He sat at his terminal. He realized that the powerful always make one fatal mistake. They assume the underestimated are too afraid to use the tools they've been given. Elias initiated a dead man switch. He didn't just have video of a break-in. He had the prosecutor on camera, admitting to a conspiracy, identifying the targets, and smoking a cigar linked to a specific luxury brand only sold in 3 shops in the state. He stayed up until dawn, stitching the footage together. He added the thermal signatures of their vehicle, which showed a government-issued license plate hidden under a magnetic cover. The underdog was no longer hiding. He was hunting. The next morning, Elias didn't go to the police. He didn't go to the press. He went to the city's annual Gala for Growth, an event hosted by Thorne and the mayor. Elias walked in wearing his only suit. It was slightly too big, and his tie was crooked. He looked like a victim. Thorne saw him from across the room and smirked, leaning over to whisper something to the mayor. They laughed. They thought he was there to plead. Elias walked to the tech booth. The intern running the AV system was a kid Elias had tutored in high school. "Do me a favor," Elias whispered. "Switch the HDMI feed to my cloud link." The lights dimmed. The mayor took the stage to talk about integrity and the future. And now, the mayor boomed, a video showcasing our vision for Oak Ridge. The giant screen didn't show 3D renders of new condos. It showed a grainy night vision shot of Marcus Thorne sitting on a sofa, talking about burning down the city to save his own skin. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the sound of 1,000 reputations shattering at once. Elias stood at the back of the room. He wasn't stuttering now. He looked at Thorne, who was turning a ghostly shade of gray. Elias raised his phone, hit send, and the footage was instantly mirrored to every major news outlet and federal oversight committee in the country. Truth isn't just a concept. It's a weapon. And in the hands of someone who has nothing left to lose, it is a nuclear option. This is the reality we live in. The powerful believe that because they hold the keys, they own the house. They believe that if you are small, you are silent. But courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the realization that the truth is worth more than your safety. Never underestimate the person who has been overlooked, because they are the ones who see everything. Stand for the truth, even if your voice shakes. Expose the shadows, even if you're standing in them. As the FBI swarmed the gala and handcuffed Thorne, Elias felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned, expecting a reporter. Instead, it was a man in a gray suit he didn't recognize. The man leaned in and whispered, "That was a neat trick with the smart camera, Elias. But you only caught the puppets. Do you really want to see who's holding the strings?" The man handed Elias a small, black memory card. "Check your camera again," the man said. "Check the footage from 3:15 a.m. You missed the person standing behind the men in your living room. The one the camera didn't trigger for." Elias rushed home. He loaded the raw data. He ran a deep layer scan on the frames. As the image processed, his blood turned to ice. There, in the corner of his bedroom, invisible to the naked eye, but caught in a freak electromagnetic interference, was a silhouette. It wasn't a man. It was something else. And it was leaning over his bed, whispering into his ear while he slept. The image shimmered on Elias's screen, a ghost in the static. A silhouette, tall and unnaturally slender, stood by his bed in the very moments Marcus Thorne and his cronies were ransacking his living room. It wasn't a human figure. The proportions were wrong. The head was too small, the limbs too elongated. And it radiated a cold, oppressive energy that somehow transcended the digital capture. The man in the gray suit had said the camera didn't trigger for it. Why? Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through Elias. This wasn't about land deals or corrupt officials anymore. This was something ancient, something that operated in the liminal spaces between light and shadow, seen only by a flicker of chance. He remembered the feeling of being watched, the inexplicable chills that would sometimes run down his spine, dismissed as nerves. Now he knew. He hadn't been alone in his home for a long time. He played the footage again, scrubbing frame by frame. The silhouette was there for precisely 1 minute and 7 seconds, from 3:15 a.m. to 3:16 and 7 seconds a.m. It seemed to be observing him, then whispering. No sound, just the subtle movement of what looked like a mouth. When it vanished, it didn't walk away. It simply ceased to be there, as if dissolving into the very air. Elias spent the next 48 hours in a blur of coding, research, and mounting dread. He cross-referenced the unique electromagnetic interference signature with known phenomena. Nothing matched. He delved into obscure forums, ancient texts, fringe theories. He found whispers of shadow weavers, entities said to feed on fear, to manipulate the vulnerable, to pull the strings of the powerful from behind a veil of perceived reality. They influenced, they coerced, they suggested. He looked back at Thorne, the mayor, the entire corrupt network. Were they merely puppets, or were they willing collaborators? Elias realized the man in the gray suit, the one who gave him the memory card, was part of something larger. A clandestine group, perhaps, who understood these entities and sought to expose them. His phone buzzed. It was an encrypted message. They know you've seen. You are no longer just an analyst. You are a threat. Find the nexus. Nexus. Elias typed back. The point of origin, where their influence began to seep into Oak Ridge. He thought of the new development, the vast tract of untouched ancient forest cleared for luxury homes. He remembered the ecological reports, ignored by the city council, that mentioned unusual geological formations and high electromagnetic anomalies in that specific area. The land grab wasn't just about money. It was about covering up something far more sinister. Armed with this terrifying knowledge, Elias knew he couldn't just upload another video. This required a different kind of exposure. He needed to prove it wasn't just an anomaly, but a presence. He packed a bag with his most advanced camera equipment, a portable electromagnetic field detector, and a powerful, multispectral light source. He drove to the perimeter of the new Oak Ridge development, the very land Thorne and the mayor had illegally acquired. The construction site was eerily quiet under the moonlight. Twisted, half-finished steel skeletons of luxury homes stood like monuments to human greed. Elias felt a profound chill that had nothing to do with the night air. He found the geological anomaly from the old reports. A deep fissure in the earth, strangely smooth and black, radiating a faint, almost imperceptible hum that made the hairs on his arms stand up. This was the nexus. As he set up his cameras, his EMF detector spiked wildly. A cold dread settled over him. He wasn't alone. A voice, not from human lips, but echoing inside his mind, began to speak. You have seen too much, little one. The threads are too intricate for your grasp. Elias gripped his camera. His hands trembled, but his resolve solidified. This was it. The ultimate underdog story. A stuttering data analyst against an ancient, ethereal force. He aimed his multispectral light source at the fissure. The light, designed to reveal hidden patterns, hit the obsidian-like surface. And then the world shifted. The fissure began to glow with an inner, sickly green light. From within it, a form began to coalesce. It was the silhouette from his bedroom, but now it was real, tangible, enormous. Its eyes, if they could be called eyes, were pinpricks of light in the shifting darkness of its form. It wasn't attacking. It was revealing itself, confident in its untouchability. It stepped out of the fissure, casting a shadow that seemed to swallow the moonlight itself. You seek to expose? You seek truth? What if the truth is beyond your comprehension? What if your world, your leaders, your very thoughts are merely echoes of our design? The entity projected images into Elias's mind. Fleeting glimpses of historical events, great leaders making decisions that seemed to benefit only a few, wars ignited by whispers, empires rising and falling on carefully placed suggestions. It wasn't just influencing the mayor, it was influencing humanity. But Elias wasn't just a coder, he was a problem solver. He knew that even the most advanced systems had vulnerabilities. He aimed his cameras, not just at the entity, but at the fissure, at the point where its form seemed most concentrated. He didn't just record, he broadcast. His special camera, designed to capture subatomic particles and energy signatures, was feeding a live, encrypted stream to the internet. The entity lunged, not with physical force, but with a wave of pure psychic energy that knocked Elias backward. He felt his mind reel, assaulted by a torrent of fears, doubts, and despair. But he had a core of truth. You exist because we fear. Elias yelled, his voice hoarse but unwavering. You hide in the shadows of our doubt. But when we see you, when we know you, you lose your power. His words were like a counter-frequency. The entity recoiled slightly. It was vulnerable to direct, undeniable observation. to the pure, unvarnished light of truth. The green glow around it flickered. It was losing its hold, its camouflage dissolving under the harsh, analytical gaze of Elias's technology, amplified by the intention of exposure. It roared, a soundless scream that vibrated in his bones, then began to shrink, to fade, retreating back into the fissure. Elias watched as the creature, the ancient shadow weaver, dissolved back into the glowing green maw. The fissure pulsed once more, then sealed itself, leaving only the black, smooth surface. The air cleared. The oppressive chill lifted. He had faced the true power behind the curtain not with a gun, but with a camera and a fierce dedication to truth. He wasn't just an analyst anymore. He was a guardian. He had not only exposed corrupt politicians, but had taken a stand against an entity that had preyed on humanity for millennia. The world would dismiss it as a hoax, a hallucination, or a cleverly faked video. But a small, dedicated few, those who understood the deeper realities, would know. Elias had broken the chain. He had made the invisible visible. He packed up his gear, exhausted but exhilarated. The fear was still there, a lingering echo, but now it was tempered with a profound sense of purpose. He knew his life would never be normal again. He was now a target for those who served these entities and perhaps an ally for those who fought against them. As he drove away, he looked back at the construction site. It was no longer a symbol of human greed, but a monument to a battle won. The power of observation, of truth, of the undeniable lens of a camera, had triumphed over ancient, manipulative darkness. The underestimated had not only risen, they had shattered the illusion. Never underestimate the power of a single watchful eye, especially when wielded by someone who refuses to look away. Fear thrives in secrecy, and injustice festers in the dark. But the light of truth, however small, can banish the deepest shadows. Be brave enough to seek it and courageous enough to share it. Because when we truly see, the unseen cannot hide. Elias returned home, the memory card from the gray-suited man still clutched in his hand. He inserted it into his computer. It contained only one file, a list of names. Not just politicians, but influential figures from every corner of the globe. And, at the very top, a single, cryptic symbol. His smart camera, still running, flickered. A new notification. This time, not from his own home, but from a public feed he had linked as a precaution. A street camera miles away, in the heart of the city. It showed the man in the gray suit, standing on a rooftop, looking directly at the camera, a faint smile playing on his lips. Then, he raised his hand. In it, he held another device, identical to the one Thorne had used to jam Elias's camera. But this time, the device was aimed not at a lock, but at the sky. And as the man pressed a button, the stars above him seemed to wobble, as if the very fabric of reality had been disturbed. The nexus was just the beginning. Elias read the encrypted message that popped up on his screen. Now you know what they are. It's time to learn who is truly fighting them, and who among us is ready to ascend.